This is day 2 of the July 95 7-day retreat in Springwater. During this past first day of meetings, including this morning, the most frequent topic was that of sadness. Feelings of sadness welling up within the organism. Sadness about past losses. One's loneliness. Unknown causes making tears well up, or feeling the constraint of tears like a dam in the chest, holding back water and air. Sadness about the state of the world, the violence, the disasters, earthquakes, floods, bombings, sniper attacks. Sadness of people exploited. Too much work, too little money. This whole ocean of personal and collective sorrow. Which has been with humanity since time immemorial. Here and there, coming up, the absurdity or incongruity, incoherence of the sadness and sorrow of the world and the beauty of this place, being here, the coming of flowers and green leaves and in touchness with sky and earth and water, the exuberance of it, and yet at the same time, the knowledge about sorrow everywhere in people's lives, maybe in one's own. Sadness at seeing frailty, decay of a person once strong, healthy. How is one to deal with all of this? This question is there explicitly or implicitly. How am I to deal? How is one to deal with this ocean of sadness, often wave after wave, at times interspersed with a moment of joy or happiness? Coupled with a question, what can or should I do in the world of so much suffering, such neediness, such need for help, or seeming need for help. It appears so to some people, it doesn't appear so to others. To people dispatching snipers or shooting randomly, the victims are not perceived as needing love, needing life. It's not perceived that way. As needing help. Oneself needs help oneself to power, pleasure, revenge, territory, lust. So coming back to oneself, what is one to do in the presence of waves of sadness or pain, deep pain? Some of it may be never expressed, held back for most of one's life. It happens frequently. And coming into a space of quietness, stillness, silence. Maybe some opening or some lessening of control, of habitual controls. And past pain surfaces to be felt, to be experienced, to be allowed to be there as it comes, not under one's control. And the events that cause that holding of sadness or holding back of sadness, not under anyone's control, but there, right now, coming up as memory, maybe not verbal memory, but certainly physical memory in the present. Is one just listening to the words, or is there some going with it? Because sadness is there, sorrow is there for human beings, for all human beings. If not at the moment personal sorrow, then this immense collective sorrow of losing, of loss, of injury, of pain, of dying. Is this the time to look at it? Such a beautiful, cool Monday morning. Insects buzzing, crows cawing. The breath heavy or light, deep or surface. Can one hear it, feel it? And whatever is manifesting in this memory-ridden body, not just verbal memories, but physically remembered pain, unhappiness, sorrow. Can it allowed to be felt, to be experienced, to be taking all the space it needs without pushing it? Whatever comes up, comes up. It doesn't matter whether it's a beautiful day, an exuberant day, or a gray day. Things are there when they're there. They come up when they come up. The habitual tendency to suppress can be watched, can be detected in this openness. of a light breezy morning, and doesn't need to be gone with. One doesn't need to go with the resistances that are so habitual. In this body-mind, resistance to feel pain, sadness, sorrow. Not now, maybe later. That's the habitual resistance. I won't survive it. I can't live through it. It's too hard, too painful, too impossible, too dangerous. Are those feelings there programmed into the system and habitually heeded? That's the beauty of retreating, alone as well as together. No habit that comes into awareness, that is detected, needs to be heeded. It can be questioned. Why do this? Why protect myself from what wants to come up or what is there? Why resist it? And this is not a question asking for reasons, but wondering about it openly and realizing no habit needs to continue this moment of open listening. Actually, one of the amazing qualities of open listening, of open presence, is that on its own, it may short-circuit habitual reactions, even though allowing them to be seen as they are about to come up, resisting pain. The resistance can be short-circuited by seeing it. And then what is there? The habit of calling it pain, the habit of calling it my sorrow, my sadness, my past. Can we see the habitualness of that? Of calling things names and of discovering with amazement the power of names on this mind and body. Power of words, sometimes single words, pushing buttons, triggering emotions of anger or fear or sadness or pleasure. So what happens at a moment of experiencing something when it's seen that the label, the word pain, or the concept of sorrow really hides what's there? And what is there, actually, this moment of freely abstaining from the concept? It has come up, it has been seen, and seen through its power of triggering reactions has been seen, examined. And what's there when the concept is held in abeyance, not calling it pain, not calling it my loneliness, my life, my fate, my problems, my difficulties, my losses, my failures, leaving all these words flying with the crows, so that what's there can, at least for instance at a time, be felt and experienced wordlessly. Wordlessly and without resistance. because we have questioned and can re-question freshly resistance to experiencing what's there. It needn't be crushed, it needn't be repressed. It needn't be ignored, and it needn't be known. So what is it? How subtly can all the organismic, physical manifestations of past memories or present memories be experienced right now without doing a thing with them, without making a thing out of them? And this is something to be watched if one is interested, very carefully, watching how a state that comes into being through memory, being evoked by something here, something that is being said, evokes sadness. Or just, as we said earlier, the diminishing of controlling consciousness allows things to bubble up. How subtly can it be felt in all of its physical motions? Without the habit cropping up again and maybe dominating to squish it, not to feel it, to see that and question it when it happens. It takes this enormously quiet presence of listening and being to detect all of these habitual reflexes of naming, of rejecting, of resisting, suppressing, and re-emerging the not knowing of what is actually there, and listening to it without knowing. Is that possible? Listening to crows in an airplane without knowing? You could say impossible, the word is already out. Yeah, the word is out and one can see the word coming out, one can hear it, but that sound of whatever is going on is not a word. A word has been attributed or assigned to it. And the word brings about a picture maybe, a direction of flying, maybe off, but one can picture it. But what is the real thing, this instant, of not fighting the words, not trying to suppress them, seeing one's dependence on them, wanting to live in the words? It's so much easier, so much more habitual than switching to living for moments in just being, full of one's wrinkles and stresses and strains and tensions and pressures, knots. Where? Somewhere in what we call this body. But what is it without the word? What is this area here without the name? Including buzzing and chirping and blowing. So how freely can one allow whatever it is that we call pain of sadness to arise, to be felt, to be attentively felt. Not, I must be attentive to this. These are just words and injunctions, tapes that play and are not necessary for this. They come automatically and can be seen as automatic tapes. You must, you should, you're not good enough. You did it. But how freely can whatever the body at this time and space needs to manifest be allowed to unwrinkle, unfold, have its space of no counter-attack. The habit may be, I need to counterattack, but that can be questioned. And realizing more and more how our life is lived on untested and most of the time false assumptions of what can and can't be done, of what should and shouldn't be done, of what needs to happen. Maybe a lightness entering one's moment-to-moment living when these assumptions are felt, heard, realized, and questioned. Now, one of the assumptions in getting in touch with sadness, so long repressed, so intensely welling up or trickling up. One assumption, if one hears be with it, one has read it maybe, friends have told one, just be with it, sit with it. One assumption in this conditioned brain is that being with it means thinking some more about it. And one may find that this thinking some more about my sadness, my sad state, or what the causes of it are, is a continuation of the same thoughts that may have triggered it in the first place. I'm not talking now about non-verbal memory, of which there is plenty for each one of us. Things happen to this organism before words were forming and concepts were forming or imposed. We're leaving that aside right now. Right now we're talking about thinking about what one has lost or is about to lose, or would like to have but cannot get, would like to be but is impossible to become. One's helplessness, the thought about it triggering the sadness, and the idea to be with it, translating it itself into thinking more about it. I have to think more about what happened to me, or the state of the world, my impotence, inability to help. And with this sort of inbuilt tendency to think more about problems, situations, pains, difficulties, tendency to think it away or think through it, think about a solution, observing it in a somewhat detached, dispassionate way, noticing how thinking more about it, more vividly, more deeply, more thoroughly, how that keeps the body in its throes of sadness or sorrow or fear or anger. Maybe even unable to stop these thoughts which fuel the fire. And yet aware that this is so thoughts, stories continued about myself and the others, fueling the agonies in this body or the pleasures in this body. What is being said is applicable to all emotions, all sentiments and feelings of either exuberance or despair. To really sit in awe of the power of stories, thoughts, concepts affecting this body in powerful ways, often in conflicting ways, because there's not just one set of ideas or storyline running, but an opposing one. I oughtn't feel like this. I should get out of this. Or thinking, oh, who did this to me? Feelings of aggression, anger, or hatred toward the people who thought says did this to me, and other thoughts saying you ought to love everyone like yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Neither loving the neighbor nor loving oneself, and yet feeling one ought to be compassionate. And at the same time, desiring revenge for hurts done to me or to mine, whoever I'm identified with, my family, my religious sect, my ethnic group, my national identity. Avenging for harm and hurt done. One of the most powerful human drives since probably before the beginnings of history. Avenging. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and maybe then some more. So, is it possible to behold all of that on a quiet, airy day or night? And it's quite all right not to know what to do with it all. Not to know what attitude to take toward it all. That's just more conditioning. Taking stands, taking sides, having attitudes toward conditions and causes. And here, maybe, for moments at a time, relieved of all of that compulsion. To take positions, to deal with it, to combat it, or to submit to it. See, the moment we put it into words, should I just submit to it all? Should I become a doormat? The words are powerful. Let people step on me is already conceptualized in a very emotion-triggering way. And here, for a while, whether it carries over into our daily life or not, we don't know yet. Right now, this is our daily life. For moments at a time, is the energy there, the energy of open listening and attending and wondering, not to meddle, not to interfere or oppose, not to control, albeit seeing the tendencies that want to go on with it, and illuminating the drive, the urge to control, and at the same time illuminating the realization of of helplessness. I can't control it. Don't know what to do with it. One whole amazing stream, not just private and personal, but common stream of consciousness, which includes the physical, the pains and sufferings and agonies and pleasures and joys and exuberances, stepping out in the morning into a fresh day, the grasses twinkling, sparkling with dew, and this incredible fragrance of wet earth, wet foliage, moist air, the sun shining through the parting clouds, birds singing. Usually by the time it gets to a certain light, the birds start singing. None of this is controllable. Who controls the sun rising? It's not even the sun rising. It's just what we think or say. Because we say it, we keep thinking it. The earth turning, who's controlling that? Darkness and light alternating with each other. Sleeping and waking. Heart beating all the time, even in deep sleep, deep dreamless sleep, this heart is beating. Who's doing it? Who's responsible for it? And with the beating of the heart, all these amazing processes of this life continuing at the present time. Eating food, we have a certain choice how much to take, what to take of what offerings, how quick to eat, how slowly to eat, how attentively to chew and swallow. But once it's swallowed, what can I do? I can tell that if I swallow too fast, something happens in the stomach. But now it's on its own, this food being. Who knows? We can only tell from textbooks or from feelings. But these feelings are they mixed with pictures and ideas? Or is, again, what we said earlier, is it possible to feel the digestive process going on without words, without localizing it? And then certainly a lot escapes even the subtlest attention. Cells dividing, blood carrying oxygen around, or food stuff. It's going on every moment, every second. Replacing of organs, tissues, glands, muscle, skin. Who's doing it? Coming back to the sadness and sort of sticking it out, or sticking with it, not moving away into habitual distractions, because it's so powerfully here right now. Some people have asked me and ask in other retreats, and I always mean to say it on the opening night, and I always forget it. It's all right to cry if sobs come up, if tears well over. Never in these many years of retreating with people heard anyone complain about anyone else crying. But quite frequently people say it's good to hear somebody feeling something. I wish I could. It's helpful to hear someone else. Which is not now an invitation for people to start crying. It was so influenceable. It's not our fault. We are that way. We affect each other deeply because we're made of the same stuff, permeated by the same emptiness and space. So it's all right to cry, and it's all right to watch it too, not critically, not in order to write one's next thesis, although that may be a subject for it, but curious about what is it about crying? Is there a storyline connected with it about poor me, the victim again? I'm just improvising. Everybody needs to listen to their own story. It's a little bit different for each one of us. And yet it's so common that stories make us cry. Remembered, verbalized stories. Or created freshly this moment, triggering the tear glands. And as one is crying, a new story emerges about me crying. It may be there, may not be there, but when it's there, it's interesting to watch it, to see this cause and effect relationship between imagery about me or others and the body responding. Very quickly, very readily, or maybe sometimes very haltingly, because there are inhibitions which can be questioned. Not gotten rid of, just wondered about. What is this felt inhibition? What is it? And leaving the question open, not as a pressure to come up with an answer, which all of us went through in one way or another by our parents and teachers, and maybe religious leaders, priests, ministers being pressed with a question for an answer. This is the freedom here. Question can be asked with no pressure to answer them, allowing the question a life of its own, to probe, to illuminate. To not know. And therefore, continued openness to examine or discover, or just be in touch with what's there. We didn't get to it today in any kind of detail about what can I do, if anything, about the sorrow of the world. Crops up all the time in meetings. And sometimes the question and realization deepens about what it is we're asking. Maybe a dawning understanding that that world out there is not separate from me in here. There is no division. That what happens in what seems the outside distant world is also happening to me, because it's one movement. One movement of consciousness. One body of experiencing. If it doesn't make sense, let's leave it as a question. It's been said over and over again by many different seers. What is meant by it? There's no separation between the world and me. What is me? Without the word, without the concept, all the ideas that make up this strong feeling, all the memories and tendencies and resistances. Well, we were observing it during a morning's talk. Without judgment. Just allowing for the time being to be there, what is there as it is. Appreciating the difficulty to see it as it is. Because all the programs affecting the seeing and becoming maybe slowly, dawningly, haltingly aware of all of this programming, which shuts down or narrows or colors the perception of what is. Wondering about it, not fighting it. Fighting is habit. Can it be felt? How does it feel to fight? Switching from imagining the object to be fought and seeing oneself as a fighter to experiencing the very process that a moment ago was gripping this body-mind. If things are not clear in the talk, please bring them up in meetings. That's one function of meetings. If you don't see it this way, bring it up. If you want to carry it further, do it in groups or individual meetings. Go over it again. We can go over it again, although never quite in the same way. That's the beauty of this work. It need never become mechanical. Because the wind is always blowing freshly. We will end here for today.